Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
Welcome back, guys. We want to thank everybody, as always, for being part of the family. And whether you're watching this over at Ko-Fi or whether you're watching this over on Patreon or on Heart's Home, our newest channel, we appreciate you guys. Also over on Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. So I just wanted to share something with you that came from my mother. And Cindy, I'm hoping is going to guide more and give us more insight into this. As it was interesting because she just said to me, Michael, each one of us is like a seed that begins to grow. And she said, even the earth itself is like a seed that begins to grow. And the water that we give, the spirit, ourselves, is really the emotions. It's the emotions are what we feed this growing seed that becomes a plant, that becomes a flower or a tree, whatever it becomes as far as that goes, and whatever we become. The water is the emotions. The emotions are the water, and then emotions are just energy in motion. So it's about cultivating. It is about cultivating the self. It's about cultivating the spirit. And we are in extremely trying times for cultivating positive energies that are going to lead to soul growth in a positive way. And we understand that we're in a dark matrix that's trying to cultivate, just to use simple terms, the darkness, when we truly want to cultivate the light.
And we did just come out of mantras and meditation, so I'm still feeling a little bit channely, which is good, because the mothers, all the mothers had come through and were speaking and wanting to share information on this about the seed of growth and how we literally feed it and we form it through our emotions. And earth is so much like a living library. It's that information we put out there, whether it be from our soul spirit out to the world, or even the earth's soul spirit out into the larger part of the universe. We all are always feeding, and we are growing layer upon layer upon layer of information. And what we put into that emotionally, that's when we begin to see what we are actually growing into, what we are harvesting. You know, I know many of you guys do gardening and you love your trees, you love your gardens. And when I had my little yard up in Nevada, I would go out and I would spend time with my trees. I would trim them, I would talk to them, I would sing to them. And they were you could visually, they were happier. The blooms were brighter, the trees were lifted up a little bit more. So this emotion like literally feeds everything around us, and even the people that we're around. Our emotion is like, well, water is one form of food, but emotion is the other. It's the etheric realm that radiates from us. It's the song that we sing that is going to feed everything else, and it's going to have some kind of resonance about the things that we're on. Also, don't forget that the world is very much a mirror. So what we do put out there is going to come back to us in many ways. So understanding that Earth has her own seed and she is growing, and we have a seed and we are growing. Our emotions, then we start to look at them a little bit different in the sense that they're actually a spiritual type of food. And this is how we see our surroundings and things growing around us. So it is a little difficult if you live in a city or around the concrete, you're around man-made things where you don't have the same song, where you're not around the same resonance, you're not able to be as close to the wild, natural forests as you could be. But notice if you are able to go out into a forest, to get out of town, just being out there, how much calmer is your soul? Think about all that food that the earth is putting off in a spiritual manner, and it's also feeding your soul. So also when it comes to us and trees and the earth, we are all very symbiotic in nature, and we work with each other, and that's just naturally how things could go. But that's what and I got to talk about Mike's mom for a minute, because she did come through and she is a different person. So it's just kind of her information and her energy is different. She's very carefree, happy-go-lucky, wanting to have a good time. But after she was out of body for a little while, I went to check in on her, and I noticed that this is a very powerful woman. She's more of a no-nonsense type of energy now, something that really brings about a different kind of substance that's very beautiful and strong.
Yeah, as far as a mom growing up, she was just gentle, kind, loving, considerate, and she had a hard time saying no. And I was in many ways definitely spoiled by her and my dad, because I really was able to have a lot of free reign as a kid, but yet they were a great example, because they were very, very leave it to beaver type stuff. I mean, they were as wholesome gets. They were great role models and examples. And my mother took care of my sick brother for 16 years, as he died at that age, 16. He was sick from 5 until, well, really 4 until 16. So, that was soul growth for her in being put into that position. And again, you might ask yourself, why would somebody, and I remember her talking about this, he didn't get to experience most of the things that most people do. He never had first love. He never had that type of relationships. He never really left childhood per se. And why? Well, I know why now, because he was taking a supporting role for this mission, and he needed to come down into 3D to be in the 3D 4D realm, and then be close to me, to where he could be one of my main guides throughout this whole time period. And many times he steps into my body to help as well, with whatever it is, energy work, direction. I mean, there's always times when, and many of you that do meditate on a regular basis, you'll realize the thought is not yours. Well, it's coming from one of your guides, and most of us have quite a few guides. Sometimes dozens of guides. But why would somebody come and plan on having a life that would be 16 years, and with 11 to 12 years of that, extreme physical challenges, nonstop doctor's visits, and all the like? Well, it was part of a bigger picture on why this whole collective of souls came in to do what they were doing. And this is part of a picture we can't see from this side, and it's meant to be kind of hidden, because it is about expansion, it is about helping others, and there's many reasons for this. If we knew everything, there would be no point in living it all out, and this is why we do that. So, yeah, my mom took a life in which she was kind of, she was fun. She was kind of dingy, if I could say that in a loving sense. This is a woman that was like really good at some things, very sharp mind, very high IQ. But when it came to mechanical spatial things, she was totally lost and clueless. And I think that was purposeful. It was very purposeful. She put herself purposefully into a family the way she did as well, with a military history and all, because it's reflective of as above, so below in so many ways. It's so fascinating to be able to look at this and now make sense out of it. And so, whereas she was not necessarily the most self-assured person and not aggressive, really not confrontational, and, definitely within the family, she was the type of person that would be like, put on some music and let's dance, type of thing. She had a lot of energy. At her surprise 80th birthday party, she was dancing and kicking over her head at 80 years old. And, that was her personality. And then to see that the bigger her, that was basically, it was kind of a break for her. There was soul growth in serving my brother. That led to soul growth, because it was all about compassion and love and support and nurturing and kindness. And, so that does lead to expansion of the soul. But in other ways, too, she was kind of, a more fun-loving person. And, that now, when we are contacting her on 5D, her bigger self is very serious and has a lot of responsibility, and a very, very different person. But it makes perfect sense, because actually, I'd say her higher self is actually much more like her father, my grandfather, who helped build the Nautilus submarine and was in the Navy for 30-something years.
Mm-hmm. And it really has been very interesting to be able to watch the process from leaving this world, from when Mike's mother left this world, and feeling her and watching her unpack the emotions and process, and think about doing different things. At one point, she was going to reincarnate rather quickly on another part of the planet, and then she just turned around, and I guess she decided not to do that. So the energy that I feel with his mom now is just really completely different, and it went in stages. So it's been a blessing to be able to watch these stages, and I'm thinking I really would, I think it would be interesting, maybe fun, to try to write a book on the different stages of moving out of this world. I don't like to call it death, because death is so final. It has this finality about it. But transitioning into another world is more of a better way to put that, how the transition works, the processes that they go through, the handling of emotions, the aha moments, and all of the change in people's perception from the time they leave the 3D to the time they look into the other dimensions, and then they kind of leave the 3D behind. But that's also a process in and of itself. That's something, there's always loss, there's always grief, but soon, usually, when one transitions, they understand that the 3D it's not their playground anymore, and it's time for them to move on and find different things. But there are so many family members that do choose to stay around children. They choose to stay around grandchildren. They simply might just have to see something that was not completed in their life completely unfold. So they might stay around for these reasons, but eventually they do return back to higher self. And then from what I have seen, my experience, the higher self is a completely different entity, yet there are similarities between higher self, and where we are here in the 3D.
Yeah, so if we leave the body in 3D and stay in the 4D, then it's still pretty much us. We might have recollections and understand past lives and different incarnations to a degree, but it's still kind of us. When we're talking about going up into that higher self, then it's a much more expanded version of us, because like right now, we've talked about this before. If you look at the blue being, that blue being, if that's representing higher self, that being, while you are here right now in the flesh, there might be 3 or 4 more other incarnations going on that the higher self is having right now. So that's one of those things that can be very kind of confusing and hard to grasp, so to speak, but it is real. And sometimes in our dreams, as I've shared this with you guys too, we can, and I'm not sure if it takes a certain amount of work or not, I'm just sharing from personal experience, shift into one of those lives or one of those co-beings, co-incarnations of the higher self. It was like maybe 2-3 months ago where I was seeing myself get up in the morning, and I was in Southeast Asia somewhere. I don't know, maybe Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, something like that. I was in a city, and I walked into the bathroom and I looked in the mirror, and I was a 30-year-old Asian man. It's like, wait a minute, that's not really me. What's going on here? And what that was, I believe, because I've also had glimpses before of another incarnation of myself that's going on right now, that I do think is going on somewhere in Asia, and is probably, 25 years younger than I am right now. So how can that be? Well, again, the higher self is a much more expansive version, and it's not this incarnation is not the totality of the higher self. I hope that makes any sense to you guys.
Well, keep in mind though, we're dealing with vocabulary words that we've been given, since a very small age, and we're dealing with information that we have to go by, and we're trying to explain these things, are these emotions, these feelings, these energies that are coming through, and we're translating. It's really not always easy to bring that information. So it does take a lot of times when we're translating information, it can take some meditating on the other part for someone to be able to pick that information up and make it useful. But we are doing what we can to bring understanding. But the way I see higher self, it's almost like, this big bucket of water, and then say you get a lot of these splash drops of this water and you spray it down, and each drop being its own little individual entity, but when it's done doing its job, it's just going to go back up to the same bucket of water. But all of that information is still an individual experience. It's all these experiences that different beings get to experience, and then it brings it all back. So, and then we could probably talk about soul streams with a little bit more understanding. When you run into people in your life and they seem, you're so much alike, and the things that you talk about, and the things that you find entertaining, and the things that bother you, when you see this kind of thing, and you have this draw to this person, many times you're from the same soul stream, but you have separated off to have different lives. And then we could talk about, soulmates. These are many people we decide to come down with and have experiences with, and we learn from one another, each individual taking a part to help the other individual grow in some way, shape, or form. But it's all always very symbiotic. So yes, even those people that maybe possibly drive you nuts, they're there for a purpose, for you to take a look at that and for you to learn something from. So especially, I always kind of say the really painful things and stuff, and I don't like to look at it. It hurts. I don't want to look at painful things, but that's our greatest teacher. That's where we learn most of our lessons. So it's a very unique world. There's a lot of different experiences to be had. There's a lot of transitions to be made, but all the emotion we put out into the world, again, see that as water. This is a type of food for the environment that you're creating around you yourself.
Absolutely. So when we think about this and the fact that there may be other incarnations of, you might say, the real you behind the 3D, 4D you, we might be encountering them in other parts of the world. And, unfortunately, in this world, the way it is, they might be on the other side of a battlefield at some point in time. And that, again, is pointing to the insanity of war. When we have the bigger picture, if we could see, like I've shared with you guys, the last incarnation that I have the details on was born in a small town close to St. Petersburg, Russia in 1844. So, again, the whole concept of patriotism gets thrown straight out. Feel good about who you are, but again, why do we have to have a concept of lifting one over the other? And again, that's getting down into that Darwinianism, survival of the fittest. It's a world that's going to gobble you up unless you gobble it up first. No, think to the body, think to the cells in the body, because again, as above, so below. They work together. Otherwise, you end up with disease and things like cancer, which end up, causing harm. So we need to learn how to work in harmony with the higher self, work in harmony with each other. And it's all about cultivating those emotions. So when there's dark events afoot, it's good to be aware of things, but don't let them bring your frequency down. In fact, double down on that and have that spiritual practice. And I don't know of anything that can turn around the frequency of the person quicker than the Vedic mantras, because it's a direct connect to 560 and above.
Mm-hmm. And that's another really super fun topic that I love. I did want to touch a little bit on these times that we're going through and Saturn retrograde, and let everyone out there know, if you've really been faced with some serious challenges, you're not alone. It's really tough on so many people out there. They're being faced with things that can be more difficult than you could ever imagine. And on the heels of this is going to come a lot of growth. So if you've been going through a really hard time, just know it's your time to grow, and how you handle that emotionally is going to set off the growth outside of you and the growth for things that are going on around you. So we want to be able, if it's anger, if it's sadness, any of those lower vibrations, we at least want to take those. We have to honor them. We have to look at them. We have to respect them. But we can channel them in a way so that when we send it back out into the universe, it makes a difference in a positive way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I hope you guys got something from this. Please do leave suggestions on topics that you want to cover on this channel, and we will go deeper. Any questions as well. If you need to make an appointment for energy work, spiritual coaching, Vedic charts, it's evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com. And we want to thank you guys for being part of the family. Thank you for your support again over on Patreon and Ko-Fi. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.